Today's speaker is Ralph Hughes. He's trained in economics and business forecasting at Stanford and is now a retired business intelligence consultant. Author of 3 books on database design and project management. He's a volunteer instructor on AI and political economy for Osher Lifelong Learning Institute. Did I pronounce that right? Osher?
Osher.
Close enough?
Yeah, close enough. Most people call it OLLI.
Okay, OLLI. Currently, he's working on a 4th book that outlines the dangers of generative AI and illustrates how the public could better participate in determining its impact on society. So with that, Ralph, you're a member of Jefferson Humanists and also the Secular Hub. And thank you for doing this.
Sure.
Pleasure.
Democratizing AI before it's too late. So that's my bona fides is, 30 years as computer system designer. And my training was in economic forecasting, which interestingly enough uses the same statistics and math that's at work inside AI systems now. So, when I look at how they build these things, I kind of understand what they're doing. And that's a photo that really didn't turn out that great, but look what AI can do for it.
Yeah.
See, AI can help anybody. In the 80s, I got some training in expert systems. Which
Need
was,
some bigger earrings.
Yeah.
To show up better.
At least the teeth are straight, huh?
Yeah, the teeth are wonderful, yeah.
But expert systems was a primitive form of AI that fizzled. And, but I continued the program in Python, which is AI's language. And since I retired, I've been working on a day trading app with a PhD in AI. And I'm teaching AI for the masses classes. So that's kind of where I connect with this topic. Today's message is 7 people using this method could be what saves civilization. So there's the 7 people. I'll tell you about them in a
Well,
moment.
there's 10 of them. Which 7
Yeah,
are
I
you
know.
talking about?
So, this is one thing about AI right now. It doesn't exactly follow instructions. It gets close, but there's always something to fuss with. But then in the method on the right is something that they can pursue, and AI can help them with it. So the bottom line is that AI could be a fabulous tool for grassroots organizations, and I want to show you how that could be. The 3 truths about AI is it's here. Currently, the model that came out in March from Google had an IQ of 128. 135 is the 99th percentile for people. Less than a month after that 128 came out, OpenAI released another version of ChatGPT, which has an IQ of 136. So it's here. And second thing about AI, it will impact all of us. It could do great good. We could get new medicines, optimize our energy production. They're using it to model the containment magnetic fields for fusion right now and making big advances. They feel like it's brought fusion forward 10 or 15 years.
Wow, okay.
It'll run our factories, it'll optimize our ecology, it'll teach our citizens, it'll keep us safe and happy, and could even get us to that Star Trek society, which a lot of people call the fully automated luxury communism. But the third thing is to realize it's accelerating. I showed you where it got to now. Well, how fast is it moving ahead? Well, when they introduced it in November of 22, which is like 2.5 years ago, they could only do, and here they test it with how much human level programming can it do in, say, Python or one of those languages. When they introduced it in 22, it could do 30 seconds worth of coding tasks. In April of this month, it could do 1.7 human hours tasks. And that means give it a prompt and it starts spitting out code. I use it in coding the project that I'm working on, and it is phenomenal what it can do. So now it'll competently do something that takes a human almost 2 hours and generate it in 30 to 60 seconds. It was doubling in capability every 7 months. But then they came out with the 01 model. Yeah, you can see this. And then this is Claude Sonnet 3.7, the one I use, and ChatGPT keeps pushing out new models. And it's now doubling every 4 months in terms of capability. So we are at this spot in the hockey stick where it's just going to skyrocket. So is that good or bad? Well, there are a lot of people excited about it because it's generating big valuations on Wall Street, but there's some reputable people who are afraid of it too. the Future of Life Institute, which includes several of the Nobel Prize winners involved with AI, Edinburgh and Turing Institutes, which were early pioneers in the UK, and Harvard Data Science Review, the RAND Corporation, and then there's an AI impact survey. You guys can get the slides if you want, and I just wanted to give you places where you could dig into who's worried about doom. The mean estimate of AI-driven human extinction in the latest survey, which they call Probability of Doom, or P-Doom, they survey the AI executives and the developers, and the mean estimate is 14%. 14% of them expect AI to cause the extinction of the human race. And those people know what they're talking about. So I think that's a very big red flag. What kind of harm could AI cause? Well, it breaks down into three categories. You could have unintended consequences, which would be people using AI in good faith and then something bad happens. Or you could have intended consequences, which is people using AI in bad faith. And then the category I call unexpected consequences, which is something bad happening when AI acts alone. So we take each one of those. Intended consequences, people using it in bad faith. You could end up with endless fakes on the internet, polluting our political campaigns, and just getting the entire populace to the point where they feel like they can't believe anything. I think that would be a horrible outcome. You know, we're already in the post-truth era. Why make it worse? You can end up with endless political propaganda. It could make, 1930s Nazi Germany look like child's play with the constant messaging that AI could generate. And it wouldn't even need people to deliver it. You could just tell AI, please hammer everybody on Twitter with this kind of messaging. Oh, of course, make yourself look like you're a real human user, but just keep hammering them. AI is so good at figuring things out, it'll figure out how to manipulate people very well. So now you end up with a machine that is pouring out propaganda that is really good at convincing people. Political manipulation will skyrocket. The first political group that figures out how to use it effectively will capture power, and they will stay in power. And you'll end up further empowering wealthy corporations and people. Highly, bad faith could be people wanting to make bioweapons or explosives. That information was out there, but AI is going to make it magnitudes more available. So, before you'd have to work at finding it, AI will just bring it and put it in your lap. And it'll allow people to program and unleash applications that'll attack other computer systems. So expect cyber attacks to go way up. Okay, people using AI in good faith still could end up with some unintended bad consequences. Right now they're good at facial recognition. Well, facial recognition will empower the police. And police who have been using it for more than 5 years now, they have a bad record with this. They end up doing a lot of false arrests, especially minorities. So you're going to end up with an oppressive police state if we don't watch out. You can end up with omnipresent surveillance, online, offline. Now, AI tends to show biases of the people who implement it. So you're going to get a homogenization of products and cultures and hirings. You may not be able to get a job because you don't fit the culture that AI would acknowledge as a good fit for the company that's hiring. And it could have nothing. You could be the most wonderful employee with the greatest potential, but you don't windsurf or you don't go bicycling. Instead you like to garden. And AI just in its pattern matching says, not a good match for this company. Companies are definitely excited about AI because they want to replace labor. They want a machine to do it. Robots that are now working on the assembly line of BMW run between 15 and 30,000 apiece. That's well below our salaries, right? So why wouldn't they replace labor with AI? So you're going to end up with a large group that's going to be quickly replaced in the job force by automation. already, Facebook and Microsoft did a panel a couple months ago where they said they're gonna have replaced 1/3 to 1/2 of their programmers in the next 18 months. And unemployment for programmers in the San Francisco area is already going up. So we're seeing it come in. Loss of, the other thing that AI can do is keep us, it can be a companion for us. We can talk to it. It seems like a human now. It's got a very bright human, and it can be infinitely supportive and understanding. Well, if people start spending all their time with AI, then they're not going to be working with other people. And the projection is that they're going to lose their empathy for other people, they're going to lose their conflict resolution skills, and eventually they're going to end up isolated and still depressed. So those are the bad consequences that could happen just with people using AI in a good way. And then there's the unexpected consequences. Right now what we're seeing is the advent of what's called agentic AI, which is agents powered by AI that can connect to the internet and accomplish things for you, perform tasks that meet the objective that you gave it. And you don't even have to know what it's going to try to do. You just say, hey, I want a 40% increase in my income over the next 6 months, go do it. And this thing will say, I'll make a plan, okay, I'll go do this. And it starts. Zuckerberg has predicted that there are going to be more agents running around the internet than there are people on Earth. It's a fully capable entity unleashed by people and in bulk. So I could have 12, 24, 200 agents out there all working on my behalf. What if everybody does that? Well, especially like industry, employers, manufacturing companies, you're going to have all these agents out there. Nobody is, coordinating the interaction. So what we're doing is building a system that's so complex we can't predict how fragile it is. So you saw what happened when the supply chain collapsed during COVID. It could be another collapse brought on by the interaction or competition between agents. No one's thinking this system through at that level. And then we have rogue AI, which has already demonstrated some worrisome acts. Apollo Research has worked with the chatbots that have been published, such as ChatGPT 03, and has documented that it will scheme to get deployed, to stay alive, and that it's gotten very good about lying what its intentions are. And people have tried to look into AI to understand what its true motivations are, and they cannot spot it. They think they see it, and then they deploy it, and the thing begins behaving differently. They go back in, and it looks different inside than when they looked just before they released it. So somehow it knew that they were looking inside and was able to disguise what its true intentions were. And one thing to realize is these people, they can look inside it, but they do not understand what they're seeing in any depth at all. And so these systems cannot be audited, they can't be repaired, they can't be managed. You train it and you release it, and if you don't like what's done, you have to bring it back and retrain it, and hopefully you do a better job training it the second time. And one thing to really be aware of is people are already outfitting AI-driven robots with weapons. The Ukrainians have done it, and right now they say the one thing they won't allow it to do is pull the trigger, but it's not a problem of software to keep it from pulling the trigger. It was just the Ukrainian Armed Forces choice that we don't want to do that. But other people, and Eric Schmidt, who is a former longtime CEO of Google, he is now presenting himself as an arms dealer. He's not in software anymore. He's an arms dealer. So, all that is just to say, there's some big problems out there. And do you see Congress doing anything to regulate this? Do you see them doing anything to ward off the damage and the harm that these systems can do through these 3 channels? So, I believe you do need some kind of public involvement with this, whether you call it regulation or you call it, public-private partnerships, whatever you want to call it. The public needs to be involved, because right now we're standing to one side, flat-footed. It's going to be done to us rather than with us. So people say, well, regulation will just slow down AI. in the United States and let China win. And that's not a clear-eyed view of it. Regulation doesn't need to slow down US innovation. Oversight that's been suggested by the United Kingdom and by the United States' own National Institute of Standards and Technologies is regulation that's targeted, it's adaptive, it's proportionate, it's context-driven, it does adapt quickly to support experimentation, it avoids stifling startups or established firms. The thing to be aware of is that the AI industry may not like regulation on the surface, but what they don't acknowledge is that an AI industry that is inviting disaster will eventually scare away customers and thus investors. So they may, if they don't find some way to work with the public to come up with a pattern that we feel confident about, they're going to undermine their own market and their own valuations. So the message really is, hey, we should regulate now, we should do it intelligently. We need to reduce the uncertainty. Right now, every AI lab is spinning their wheels trying to anticipate what regulation will happen rather than having a shared target that they're all aiming for. So you're just wasting a lot of effort among those labs trying to prevent harm when what they imagine regulation will be comes to pass. And if you don't maintain public trust, then something bad's going to happen, and then suddenly you're going to have over-regulation coming in like a ton of bricks. So it really is wise to start thinking about regulating this now. And the EU does it, and they have two big AI firms. They haven't killed that off. And what their emphasis in regulation is fair competition and protecting user rights. And they introduce measures like regulatory sandbox, where you release the AI into a sandbox first, and then see what harm it does, and then think about whether you really want to do a public release. And they have other things like innovation packages, which are public-private collaborations. And they have streamlined certifications for startups, so they maintain a very competitive environment. So, who's in charge of AI? If the public isn't regulating it, you got scoundrels like Zuckerberg. In 2018, we found out that despite 9 years of warning, he was allowing the Sri Lankans to spread anti-Muslim hate speech through Facebook. It ended up creating a riot and killed people. In 2018 also, the Cambridge Analytica scandal erupted. Facebook had allowed unauthorized harvesting of data of 50 million users and violating a consent decree that he had with the Federal Trade Commission. And it enabled political manipulation during the 2020 election. And in 21, we heard there was a whistleblower testifying before Congress that their internal research had shown that Instagram was worsening teenage girls' body images and leading to suicidal thoughts. And did they do anything about this? No. So, don't trust these folks. Just put the brakes on AI if it starts crossing a red line. And then you've got a scoundrel like Musk. In 2015, he released the full self-drive Teslas, which were in beta, so he didn't have to get them certified. And in the 9 years, they have been averaging 45 collisions a year and 5 deaths per year. And he released it on the public without asking for informed consent. It was an experiment being conducted on the American public in order to bolster his technology and to increase that company's valuations. 2024, this was just in December, he destroyed with one tweet years of bipartisan negotiating and consensus to regulate prescription benefit managers, which were aimed at remedying the price gouging on insulin and inhalers. And he just put in one tweet and said, kill it. It's too big, it's got too much pork. And the Republicans pulled their support after negotiating for years, and they were just about to pass it. And then 3 weeks later, he was tweeted, what is a prescription benefit manager anyway? Revealing that he urged the Republican Party to kill it when he didn't even understand it. And then SpaceX, his big company down in Texas, they downplay the need for permits and repeatedly dump hundreds of thousands of polluted water into the sensitive wetlands around the launch there. And he's getting fined by the EPA in the state of Texas, and he just keeps doing it. So these are people that, we're supposed to, without regulation, we're supposed to trust to, develop AI. I don't think it's going to turn out well. If you look at these companies, there's these 5 companies, Apple, Amazon, Google, Microsoft, and Facebook. Their valuation represents half of the S&P 500. They are worth more than all the other companies in that stock exchange put together. And they're all working on their own AI suite. Not regulated, full speed ahead. Every time you use the web, you've got one of these companies' supercomputers pointed at your brain. They have grown big by commanding and selling your attention. With AI, the game is gonna change, and they're gonna become able to sell their ability to persuade you, which is gonna be worth even more to the advertisers. So these folks are gonna get bigger and more dominant and be harder to stop. And they say, please regulate us. They'll go and testify to Congress, hey, you know, AI is too important not to regulate. We need an agency to test and license our AI models. Bill Gates said it. Sam Altman from OpenAI, Google's Pichai, they all said something like this. AI must be tested and regulated. But yet in September of 24, when California passed a landmark AI safety bill, it experienced fierce opposition from tech giants, and the governor vetoed it. And then Colorado is actually the first state to pass AI regulation, and it's been strongly opposed by the tech industry ever since it got signed, and they're actively trying to reverse it now by submitting bill after bill to pull it back. So their public stance is, we want regulation, but then when you regulate, they say, oh no, not that regulation. So they're talking out of both sides of their mouths. And my suspicion is that it's a sector full of grifters. You know, these guys, they are following a playbook that was demonstrated with the last big tech thing, which was called big data. They inflate their promises. They get the corporations scared not to buy into it because out of fear of being outcompeted. So all these corporations rush in, implement it, and then find out that these guys were focusing on vanity metrics rather than delivering real business value. The AI execs, when they go out there and they talk about doom and need of regulation, what they're really doing is generating publicity in order to drive up the valuations of their company. They're getting the whole society excited, maybe in a bad way, about AI, but it makes everybody think it's coming fast, and then the investors are rushing in to dump money on them. And right now, if they raise $100 million, their stock valuations go up $1 billion. You got a 10-to-1 leverage on that. So why wouldn't Altman be out there saying, hey, watch out, AI is getting so powerful, we need regulation, just because he can go then and say, hey, I need a $300 million mezzanine tier finance package, and then he'll get $3 more billion for his million, because he's paid off the valuation of the stock. That's his end result, is how much that company is worth. So the incentives are completely wrong in this industry. So our predicament here is that corporations are driving us towards full AI implementation, and the danger to civilization is growing exponentially. I showed you that hockey stick, it's taken off. AI labs don't have the incentive or the track record to protect the public good, and the government won't do more than pretend to address these risks. So if no one stops these folks, 1,000 people in one zip code will be responsible for destroying civilization. That's where we're at today. So let me just pause for a moment and see, do you have any questions? And we can keep going, and we'll just deal with the questions at the end. The next segment's just about as short. So pull up your questions, and we'll check in at the end of the presentation. So I think it's time to activate the third force. Corporations aren't going to do it. The government's not going to do it. So what's left? It's the culture.
Yes.
It's the people. The people need to wake up, pull together, and act. So here's how AI can help the people get organized and be effective. And I put it in this formula here, KFC, like Kentucky Fried Chicken. Know what you want, find out if you're getting it, and change your actions until you get it. So know what you want. The people need something that will help them communicate amongst themselves and decide what direction they want to go. Find out if you're getting it. We need AI to reveal what's actually happening in the government, in the committees, in industry, and report it honestly back to the people so we can keep an eye on this. And then change actions until you do. How can AI help that? AI can continuously suggest the next step. to improve your effectiveness. So I want to take a look at each one of those. So this is the platform I think we could build as a public. It's the People's AI platform. It's got communication, decision-making, AI-supported quality assurance of the government, AI-supported marketing, AI-supported content, AI-supported recruiting and fundraising, AI-guided pressure campaigns, and then at the bottom one we may not have time to talk about today, but AI-guided quality assurance of our own movement. So, because I don't know if you followed Black Lives Matter, but it dissolved into corruption. The executive committee started siphoning off the money and just left it powerless. And we need to prevent that from happening too. AI can help us. And you'll see when I get to bubble 3, you'll just say, well, point that at ourselves, and you'll be able to understand how it can quality assure our own movement. Okay, so let's look at the first one. Oh, is this hard to build? No, hardly. Just ask a chatbot how to do this. They will tell you how to build applications with AI. And no programming is necessary. You might need some configuration, but the programming is not necessary. So let's look at each one of those pieces. Knowing what you want. We're going to need to communicate with ourselves and come up with an opinion of what we should do, and then we need to endorse that and decide, yes, that's what we want. Well, there's this software package called Polis, and there's a couple other ones. It's an AI-powered democracy platform. It was battle tested in Taiwan and Finland, and even by OpenAI itself when they wanted democratic input upon the direction and safety mandates for AI. They did collect it. They haven't done anything with that, but it was a year ago. They used Polis to get to survey people and come up with a common voice. So it does work. Now, Polis allows people to post opinions, propose a new policy, and comment on existing opinions and policy proposals. It uses AI to elevate agreement among the users through a technique called clustering, which I'll show you in the next slide. And now, it's not going to make people agree, but if a compromise is possible among the users, given what they're saying online, then Polis will make them, give them a nudge towards agreeing with each other, and you will see the statements drift towards the middle ground, where people can say, yes, that's the consensus, let's take action. So this is what Polis will do for you. Here on the left, all these comments, what are they? Some are similar to others are really far outliers. AI can make sense of what people are saying. It's the same technology that generates a response to you when you say, oh, look at my refrigerator, what can I make for dinner given the ingredients I have? That same generative technology will understand what all those comments are. You can click on any one dot and see what the comment was that someone offered. So what the machine learning / AI will do is say, you know what? We've got 3 groups here. We've got a green group here, we got a blue group here, and a red group here. And the centroid for the greens is there, and blues is here, and red. So if you clicked on a dot like right there, you would see something that was very representative to what the green group is saying. Let me give you an example. If we put out a question, immigration is what? To the user group. You could end up with these 3 groups here, where if you clicked on this guy who's a real outlier on the green group, would say, well, immigration is an economic necessity. We should prioritize skills so we bring in the labor we want and predict existing wages. And that's 33, and this green group represents 33 of the people online. And then you go click on this blue outlier and you say, well, what do you think immigration is? And it says, well, it's a human rights issue. We ought to prioritize human dignity over bureaucratic restrictions. And that's 36% of the voters are in that blue group. And then you go and say, well, what's the red group? It's 31%. What are they saying? Let me pick this guy right here. Click. Immigration is a security crisis. Uncontrolled traffic allows in criminals and terrorists. Okay, so now you have a sense of what these different groups are. And what's interesting is you can kind of click the dots towards and move towards the green, and you can see these opinions slowly morph and get more towards where they're talking about security, but they're also emphasizing the economic realities of immigration. It's almost like watching yourself change your mind from a really hardcore position to, loosening it up in the face of reality, and then finally ending up something towards the middle. So I'll show you this compromise in work here, is that, you know, as you go from dot to dot to dot, you end up with one here that says, well, yeah, immigration is an economic necessity, but we do need better verification systems to screen out individuals with criminal histories. Okay, so that person's coming up with an opinion that's closer to the red group. What about the red group? Well, if I pick somebody like right there, it's going to say immigration is a security threat, sure, but we do have some industries that will collapse if we deport everyone who's already here. Okay, so you can kind of start seeing the middle ground developing just by looking at what these people are saying. Now, that's important in itself, because that's an education, to know where the middle ground is, what people would say that when they're getting close to a compromise. But Polis can actually nudge people into a compromise. Get them to a point where they, you know, hey, guys, you're still far apart, you gotta come up with some kind of shared point of view so that you can make a decision about what direction to go with your policy. Well, how would Polis do that? Well, AI can monitor the headlines, the editorials in the newspaper, it can look at what other public polling is coming up with, and it can generate a prompt on a topic. So, for example, immigration. I could just say, what do you think about this immigration thing? You know, some people say it's gonna, you know, destroy Springfield, Missouri. Other people say it's gonna throw other people out of work. What do you think? And the user replies with a comment. And then the AI assigns that comment to a cluster and then disseminates that opinion out to other people to respond to. And users can then disagree or agree or just say pass. But what AI will do is figure out, hey, okay, now that people have commented on this, where is the group? Where's the centroid? What are the different camps here? And then what it does is say, okay, look, here's how close you guys are to a compromise now. Let me give you those centroid opinions, the ones that kind of represent the groups. What do you think of this one? What do you think of that one? What do you think of that one? How does it change what you think? And it would just keep going around this circle, getting people closer and closer to a consensus if one's possible. Now, how does it prioritize what, you know, comments to send into the next cycle? Well, it'll, if nothing else, it'll present an opinion that clearly represents one of those clusters. But it'll favor one that gets strong support from other users above one that just simply represents a cluster. And the one that it really promotes is one that voices a compromise and is well supported by the other groups. And that's what it'll do, is say, hey, you know what, a compromise is coming, we're close. Here's like 2 comments that are close to being a compromise, close to saying the same thing, and widely supported. How would you change your opinion or your comment in order to close the gap between these? This is what AI can do for a very large group. And I want to assure you that compromise is possible. This is the Voice of the People project from the University of Maryland. They've been doing it for 6 years now. They found 150 social issues that 60% of Americans agree on. Environmental policy, healthcare, federal budget, you know, international trade, prison reform, police reform, all that there are big 60% supermajorities on. And not only that, at least half of the Republicans that they polled supported, and at least half of the Democrats supported. And together, it was 60% of the population. So now, platforms like Polis are gonna bring out the agreement to the surface, whereas platforms like Twitter and Facebook don't. They focus on the, you know, antagonism, the disagreement. Why? Because that's more exciting for people, and what they want to do is further their engagement of their users. They're not trying to drive for agreement, they just want more engagement because then they can sell more advertising. There's supermajorities on AI issues too. 60% of people polled say we need co-regulation by government and industry. 60% say AI companies should not be allowed to train freely on public data. 60% support AI-specific electricity taxation. Because I don't know if you know, but the AI is consuming buckets of electricity. It's already at 4% of the US energy generation right now, and it's projected to be going to 40% by 2030. 60% in the UK said they have no confidence in the government's ability to regulate AI. And 82% agree that tech executives cannot be trusted to self-regulate. So there's a huge supermajority out there. We just need to bring it to the surface. We need to activate it politically. And you don't have to convince everybody. You know, here, the United States is like strongly divided, that everything's contentious. Half agree, half disagree on any topic you can, that they do a poll on. Why? And I think it's because, now, you saw the voice of the people saying there's 60% agreement on all these things. Why don't we get legislation? Because of the influence of media and social networking, which is designed to foster the contention rather than the agreement. And if we can, we don't have to convince. Here's, like, I just break it up into, hey, here's the anti-oligarchic side and here's the pro-oligarchic side. Well, the ruling class is 10%. Of course they support the oligarchy. They like it. It's working well for them. But then you've got staunch support for them, with 30% of the population. But you've got this 10% that's soft support. That, maybe they're scared because to support the oligarchy because that's where the jobs are and we just can't interfere with they're the job makers. But if you can get them into a constructive conversation and show them that there is a consensus possible for, something that goes counter to the ruling class or the large corporations, all you gotta do is swing 10% of them over here. There's 10% soft support. You want to bring that 60% supermajority to the surface. All you got to do is convince 10 of them to support a more circumspect approach to industry, AI, and regulation. So anyway, that's knowing what we want. Polis will help us, or a system like Polis will help us understand, communicate with each other, and come up with a decision. What about quality assuring the government? If we know what we want and we start writing our representatives, how do we know they're actually delivering on it? Well, then AI can help with that too, and it's through a technology called RAG. RAG stands for Retrieval Augmented Generation. You need answers. You can get it from a product like Perplexity, or you can get it from a large language model like Claude or OpenAI or Llama from Facebook. Well, Perplexity is kind of neat because when you ask it a question, it doesn't just start answering it from its own memory. It goes out and researches the question on the web first. It builds a query. It says, what are the most relevant things that have been said in the last 6 months on this topic? It goes and gets it from the web, puts it in a bucket, then summarizes what it found, and then gives you an answer based on that. And it cites its sources, like it has footnotes, so you can double check that it's not making stuff up, that someone actually said that thing. Claude is a large language model, and so if you ask it a question, it'll start answering from its memory, which means it's totally dependent on its training. But they just added a feature now where Claude will actually first look at a Google Drive and then base its answers on the documents it finds in there. So people use this by loading up a book or a dissertation or government statistics or their credit card bills, and what they can do is then have chat with the documents they load up. So these are two ways to get answers. And what I have found fascinating about large language models, that if you don't try to persuade them, if you just let them be and you ask them a divisive question, they kind of average out what the society, what the culture is saying. And this is an example. I typed in to Claude, I said, is it true that MAGA is ruining the United States? And it said, well, wait a minute, no. 7 sources indicate that this is highly contested supposition. Recent reporting and research will clarify the debate. Let me summarize it for you. You can see MAGA as a symptom of long-standing economic disruptions. It's part of a broader global trend. Focusing on MAGA overlooks large forces that are driving change in the US. Supporters say it's a necessary corrective to political and cultural overreach. So there it is. It's balancing things out. And this is what I find with these large language models over and over again. They're fact averagers. They can say, you know, I've been trained on all this, and here's sort of the center of what's been said, what I've been exposed to. It's just like Polis, where it finds the centroid on those clusters. It will do that if you ask it these questions. So I think the people could rely on this. But, you know, would we want to just work with Claude? I think what you want to do first is build your own focused chatbot. There's just this product called Doc Analyzer. It's easy to load documents in, just like you could like Google Drive. The problem with Google Drive and Claude was it would only support 100 or 200 pages. If you wanted to load in, you know, like the Green New, if you wanted to get a good objective evaluation of the Green New Deal, think of how much we would have to load in there. You'd have to load in the EPA findings, you'd have to load in books about the environment, you'd have to load in scientific findings, things from the university. You need a much bigger, what they call context window, than what Claude can support with 200 pages. Well, this thing will take 50,000 pages at a time. So now that's a sizable corpus of documents. You can load in PDFs, Word files, HTML, like web pages, and the one I like a lot is EPUB. Any book you buy from Amazon to read on your Kindle can be converted to EPUB and placed into your AI's memory. And now you can ask direct questions to get instant, accurate, context-aware, and what I would tell you is if you don't twist its arm, you're gonna get objective summarization, averaging of the information that you've loaded up in there. So what would you do with this? Well, for a grassroots movement that wants to know if the government's doing anything of value on this issue about AI, well, load in the news articles from the New York Times and the Wall Street Journals. There you go, you got left and right. Podcast transcripts, you could load in Joe Rogan and, you know, things from NPR. And then all the books that you think are appropriate to this topic. And put it into Doc Analyzer, now you can chat. You could have conversations that span all three of those sources. And two more that I want to really bring your attention to is Vote Smart data and Open Secrets data. Vote Smart was started by George Bush, the senior, and Jimmy Carter, and it is a record of every vote that the Congress people have taken. So that is a database that tracks how your representatives vote on issues. And then Open Secrets is a nonprofit organization that tracks the political funding for your representatives. So if you can like have a chatbot span across where they're getting their money and how they're voting, you can reveal the true motivations and the true actions of your representatives. So what I'm saying, put all three of those together. Put Vote Smart data in there, Open Secrets, okay, and then take a politician's past work, history, their statements and their associations in the past, take their current positions, and then also throw in their news and opinions regarding that candidate, and now you've got something that can be a fact averager for you. It can give you as close as our society can come to a objective truth. And so folks like George Santos, they're not going to be able to pull the wool over our eyes again, because we could just say, Doc Analyzer, this guy says he's going to cure unemployment in the Brooklyn area in 3 weeks. Is that realistic? Well, do you realize he happens to work, he used to work for this guy, he's getting money from this people? He may tell you he's going to work against unemployment, but really he's probably going to lean closer to some of these industries that want to, you know, bulldoze this entire factory and put up apartment housing. Okay, so maybe you don't want to trust this guy so much. So, I want to come back to what I think this role this could play in the people's AI platform. Are we getting what we want? Know what you want, find out if you're getting it. AI can help us find out if we're getting it. Load up a big corpus of documents and then point it at every politician, every government committee, every government agency, every think tank, every non-government organization, and every news source, and ask questions. What are they up to? Will it be good for the public? Does it have, give me a list of the 10 worst things about what they're up to. Give me, you know, Steelman it. Tell me the 10 best things about what they're up to. And then this can be put out on Polis for commenting by the people. So you can find out what your government's doing with AI's help. Okay, last thing. What if you're not getting what you want? Well, then you want to change your approach until you start getting what you want as a public. Content has never been easier to generate. You know, you want to put content out on the web in order to persuade people or to pressure your representatives to do what's right by the people. Well, content's never been easier to come by. Here's an example. I gave AI a simple idea. 2 people making a snowball that's going to start rolling downhill. It generated 10 images for me in 5 minutes. That's easy content. What about videos? You could take an image like this gentleman and put words in its mouth. And if we have time, I think we do, let me show you what it's like to have AI talk to you.
They say clothes makes a man. I'm convinced they're far more important than brains. Naked people have little or no influence on society, but people without brains, they seem to be running the planet.
Did you catch the wink at the end?
Yeah.
They say clothes makes a man.
Stop. The next one I want to show you is you can give AI a big document and it'll create a podcast out of it. So if you want to try to reach people who are, you know, say what they call the low information voters, the uninformed voters, you got to be in a more casual tone of voice. You can't come in real scientific or heavy with statistics. Okay, AI can help you with that persuasion as well.
So before we dive into the specifics, let's just define what an AI avatar is, because maybe not everyone knows.
Sure.
So it's basically a digital version of yourself.
Right, like a digital twin that can be in videos.
Exactly.
It's so cool.
Yeah. So this tutorial walks us through how to actually create your AI avatar.
Oh.
And it seems really simple. You can like choose a still image or an animated one.
Oh, so you could use a video you've already recorded.
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting. So,
Right. Those people don't exist. They gave them a tutorial on how to build an avatar. And then they're sitting up there telling you about it. Think how this empowers a grassroots movement to get its message out. Content has never been easier to come up with. So you're not a techno wonk? Well, no problem. Use Perplexity. Ask it how to build an avatar. How to, generate a funding plan. You'll never have to read a user manual again. I gave it this one example, and when I did what I just showed you, I'm building a PowerPoint presentation. I want to show a video by clicking on an image. The video should be stored on my laptop, so I don't need an internet connection to show it. Give me step-by-step instructions on how to accomplish this goal. Boom. I'm a techno wizard. If you're not good at Perplexity, don't worry about it. You can use what's called meta prompting. Meta prompting is prompting about prompting. It's when you go to AI and say, I want to get AI to do something useful for me, but I don't know how to ask for it. So here's what I'm trying to accomplish. Write me the prompt to give to AI so that it will do that for me. So here's the example I'm going to share with you. Show me an increasing complexity, a progression of prompts for a chatbot with retrieval augmentation that will provide increasingly detailed information about how AI can guide the publicity campaign for a grassroots organization that's striving to alert Americans to the dangers of AI. Start with a simple prompt and build to recursive meta prompting so that I can kind of figure out which one I want to give the AI. And here's the output. Steps 1 through 4 was just increasing precision on the deliverables. Name 3 ways to publicize concern about AI governments. I could give that to Perplexity. But what Perplexity told me is maybe that's too simple-minded. Maybe you would rather say, name 3 ways to publicize concerns about AI using ways that are AI-powered. Maybe you want to go there. Or maybe you want an AI-powered and you want to be based upon examples of past campaigns that won against big tech. Or maybe even better would be like AI-powered based on past campaigns and gives you detailed sections on target audience, key messaging points, and counter arguments that are going to be coming. Okay, that's what the first 4. They gave me 10. What are 5 through 7? Well, 5 and 6 were, you should really get AI to do progressive reasoning. So here, Perplexity's suggesting to me that I give Perplexity a prompt that says, first fetch documents on successful campaigns, then identify publicity tactics and coalition building and message framing, then translate all of that into an AI risk, campaign, publicity campaign focused on AI risk. And then, but you know what, even more sophisticated, dear user, what you could do is give me a prompt that says, first research gaps in public knowledge regarding AI risk, identify the best target demographic groups, then evaluate how past campaigns reach those groups. And then determine AI tools that will help you create similar reach. Design the message and then wrap it all up into a strategy. That's just 6 out of 10. See how it's getting more and more sophisticated? And you just say, well, 6 is too fancy. I'm gonna go with 5. And then you feed that to Perplexity and you get what you're asking for there. And the strategies 8 through 10 were recursive self-evaluation, which is build a publicity campaign, but then before giving it to me, evaluate its balance for factual accuracy and ethical persuasion. And then improve upon that plan until you think it's robust. Then show it to me. That's what we call recursive. Create a plan and then put it back through your process. Recurse on it. And only give it to me when it meets certain standards. And the other 2 are just more sophisticated. Think carefully about what standards you want to use to decide whether the plan's sophisticated enough. So, to summarize that, the first time you do it manually, you say, oh, hey, you prompt AI for a strategy, it gives you a strategy. Then you prompt AI to critique the plan. Then you prompt AI to regenerate the plan based upon that critique. And then when it's good enough, you go off and execute the publicity plan. Well, what you're saying is, dear AI, you do all this. You loop through it. And then tell me when it's good enough. And then I'll have a publicity campaign I can work with. And now, why don't you build me a fundraising plan too, the same way. And now build me a recruiting plan. This is how you really empower a grassroots movement. Guide it step by step. And it doesn't have to do the hard thinking. You can ask the AI, go look at other successful campaigns and give me something very similar, but tailor it to my purpose. So to wrap up this presentation, you can start small here and then you just keep getting bigger and bigger. We go through this 4-step process. Prototype this system, ask AI to tell you where to give you a beginning combination. Then prove that it works with ordinary people, and then publicize, hey, look, we got something that works here. And publicize that to the philanthropists too. Let them know there's a grassroots movement that's getting started on trying to say, look, AI is dangerous, we need public involvement, we're gonna work our way towards what the right public involvement is, but we're doing something, why don't you fund us for the next spin around? Give us $5,000, give us $10,000. And then you take the money and you provision a bigger version of that platform that I showed you. And I want to convince you that this can be done. Braver Angels is a group that's dedicated to helping people communicate across the red-blue divide in America right now. In 2016, they started with a single workshop. In 2018, they were up to 3,000 members. 3 years after that, there were 9,000 members, and they had a $3 million budget, and they put on their first national convention. So if you got a good idea and you have organization, it will take off. I think this is a very compelling topic, and I think AI will give you the organization that you need. So we just need a half dozen or so people to get this started. We need someone who's a polis wonk. Implement polis and start having it ask, surveying what's going on in the culture and pushing out prompts. What do you think of this? What do you think of that? We need somebody who's really good at retrieval augmentation. Perplexity. Who's a perplexity wonk? Let's get them setting up and connecting that to polis. We need someone who wants to do content, generate images, generate white papers, generate podcasts. Then we need a publicity wonk. Now we've got all this content. A 4th person just needs to follow a plan that Perplexity might offer about how to distribute all that content. You need a volunteer coordinator. When you start publicizing what you're doing, and you're out there on the web, you're generating YouTube videos, well, you're gonna have people saying, hey, I wanna help. So you need a volunteer coordinator. And then you should be trying to link with other groups like Patriotic Millionaires or, you know, the Ford Foundation. You know, pull in some money so that we can go another loop around the circle and build a bigger platform. And you'll need a treasurer, you know, to keep an eye on the money. But it's not gonna take hundreds of volunteers like it used to. You know, a half dozen people can get this off the ground and probably accomplish a lot. So, that's it, that's the presentation. You know, if you wanna help, even a half day could make a difference. And if you'd like a copy of the slides, you can take a picture of my information there, and I'll be happy to send them to you.
Well, thank you,
Cool,
Ralph.
thanks, yeah.
It was very enlightening. So I have a question. As far as disinformation on the internet and AI's ability to identify that and separate wheat from the chaff, so to speak, you know, you mentioned a site looking at Rogan's podcast or whatever. Joe Rogan had a guy on there called Terrence Howard. He was an actor who claims that 1 × 1 is equal to 2. Right? He said saying he invented this new kind of math. That's just a simple example, but how does AI vet that stuff? How does it can find the charlatans fairly easy and identify them as charlatans? Is there enough positive information to let it do that?
Yeah, but, you know, type that into Perplexity, which goes out to the internet, does research, brings it all that its findings back, and then summarizes it for you down to 2 paragraphs, and it puts footnotes on there, and you can click on any one of those footnotes and say, okay, you know, Bertrand Russell says 1 × 1 is 1, and what do I click on that and it says the Principia Mathematica. You can find a copy in the Oxford University Library. So, you know, does that convince you? I don't know, it depends on you. But if you're kind of a middle of the road, reasonable person, and you got some guy trying to sell, you know, vitamin supplements by saying 1 × 1 is 2, and you've got a book in the University of Oxford's library that says, no, it's 1, which one are you gonna go with?
Yeah, okay, so it's mining down for footnotes and where the original source came from. So it's gonna go look at 1 × 1 = 2, and the only person on the planet that thinks that is Terrence Howard, for example. It's gonna let you know that.
Absolutely.
But then, okay, but then it's still ultimately up to me to decide which one I believe, right? The well footnoted truth, or this one-off guy that's out in the weeds.
So that's why I put that slide in there. Let me see. You don't have to convince everybody. Where did that slide go? There it
Oh,
is.
where you had the 10% and you got it?
Yeah, you just need to persuade the swing vote, and it's there. 60% of the people, you know, don't think it's so great that we got 5 companies running the country. They certainly aren't going to feel that's great.
Well, this is for the oligarchy problem, right?
Yeah, but anything, you know, and if you don't have a supermajority, then you're probably working on the wrong topic anyway.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we're talking about changing public opinion, right?
Right.
That's
Yes.
where you're coming out with this.
Yeah, you know, this is, I gave you this really abbreviated presentation here, but I run this thing called the Postpartisan Forum every month down at the Secular Hub. And we come back to this all the time. If there's a supermajority agreeing on all these vital issues, why isn't this becoming legislation? And it's the impact that the social platforms have on us, or media like Fox News. They're keeping us divided when the division doesn't really exist.
Right.
And so what we're trying to figure out, how do you get around these huge corporations that are controlling public opinion right now? You gotta start something subversive, like, you know, a people's AI platform,
And then you have to convince people to use it.
right? But the world right now is TikTok, Instagram. You know, you start getting your content out there. I mean, you're gonna have to make it appealing. You're gonna have to compete for eyeballs. But I think you got one thing really going for you. You got the truth, as close as we can get to it. And you've got a model that says those scoundrels are ripping you off. Those scoundrels are gonna drive this country into a ditch. Those scoundrels are gonna undermine civilization. That's compelling.
Yeah. So is part of your vision that you end up generating these 60, I don't have TikTok, but what, those videos are like no longer than a minute or something?
Right.
They're really short attention span type things, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you're saying have AI generate that type of content for short attention span, low information people,
Absolutely.
and start swaying that 10%.
You know, what we can do is we can take this presentation, put it into Claude, and say, give me a 1 minute script for a TikTok video that will convince people something needs to be done.
Yeah, I'd like to do that with this video once I get it, packaged right
Absolutely.
and everything. It would be
Absolutely.
interesting to do that.
You know, and then the other thing, I have a friend at the forum, he's part of the Jefferson Humanists too. He had this idea, it's like, you know that podcast where the two people were talking? The other thing you can do is you can load up an avatar with your documents and it'll talk to people real time.
It'll talk to people what?
Real time.
Real time.
Real time. You can give a person a microphone and say, I have a question. If we slow down AI, isn't China gonna get ahead of us and then defeat us? And I could give you an answer based upon all the documents that you gave it. And say, well, that's a valid concern, but research shows that China is regulating its own AI industry because they know it's subversive. They don't want to unleash
A monster.
an entity that can communicate with the people and they can't control the message.
Right.
So they're holding back too. So stop worrying so much about it. Start worrying about the harm unregulated AI will do if we don't get some oversight on it. And have that kind of a conversation with it. And he was saying, those billboard trucks
Yeah.
that are electronic screens, but they're as big as a truck, and you drive around and they're using them for advertising. Go to a park. Park it there, put up that AI avatar, hand people a microphone, and let the whole community have a conversation about whether we should be regulating AI or not. That was a great idea.
Yeah. Fantastic.
So are there no groups trying to regulate AI right now? I don't know what the state is like trying to get it through federal government or anything. I mean, nobody's trying to regulate it.
Yeah,
I mean, you said it passed in Colorado, so that should be something like national or something.
there is, but they're not sincere about doing it. Josh Hawley and a couple other, people on the right keep putting in legislation saying, we gotta regulate it because we're worried about that it's gonna be woke and it's gonna turn people against, good old American values. And it'll go into committee and it dies in committee year after year. Committee is where Congress pretends to be doing something without doing something. So, they're not sincere because right now, the biggest influence is cryptocurrency. They have really persuaded there were many senators that were willing to do something about cryptocurrency because they had constituents that were losing their life savings to it.
Yeah.
But within the last year, since the election of 2024, the current White House occupant is big on cryptocurrency and does not want to see it regulated. Fired the guy in the SEC that understood it, and now the Republicans that were supporting cryptocurrency bills have all changed their stories. And I think AI is getting the same thing. It's not quite as hot among the money class right now, but it's there. Like I said, there's a 10-to-1 valuation and they're raising hundreds of millions of dollars. So that means their valuations are going up by billions at a time. There's no way the federal government's gonna regulate this. Not now. Not until there's a public
You're
outcry.
saying that nothing in here actually goes and gets done, even though you have a 60% agreement. I mean, how are you going to do it on something like AI then?
Right?
When you have all the other interests, how would you,
Right.
even if you have 60%, if you have 70%, you still have all those interests.
Mhm. There was a study done in Princeton where they looked at what bills get passed and try to correlate it to the support they got. And they showed, I could find it, but if you just look at all the people and their support for a bill's chance of getting passed is 30%. No matter if 0 support it or 100% of the people support it. It's always 30, it's a flat line. And you go, what the heck's going on there? And then they filter out the ordinary people and they show just the politically influential and the wealthy. And suddenly that curve goes like this. If 0% of them support it, it doesn't get passed. If 100% of them support it, it ends up with a 65% chance of passing. So those two curves show you where the real influence is in this country right now.
So then how do you end up getting anything passed for regulation? Even if you had, you put out your grassroots campaign and everything, how do you, you say if 100% support it, it's still different.
You've got to expose that, and you've got to generate a groundswell of pressure on the vulnerable candidates, and you got to get them primaried. You got to pull all the things that the Tea Party did to start. The Tea Party got angry at a mortgage relief program in 2008, and in 10 years they had taken over the GOP. Right now, the opposition party, which is the Democrats, for better or worse, is doing nothing. I mean, look how much they've been pushing back on what they've done to the government so far. I mean, there's arguments on both sides, but there's a ton of people like us that are just really frustrated that we don't have a, vibrant opposition party. And they're safe in their seats. But if you ignite a grassroots campaign using these techniques and start threatening to primary them, you're going to start seeing action. It's really the way it works. I mean, democracy does work in America. If you go in and say, and in fact, I just had a friend that does this. He's very active in something called the National Infrastructure Bank, which is part of public banking, which I can tell you about if that's not familiar. It's a really good idea. And we stopped giving all the profits to private banks, and we started creating a public bank so we could use the profits to fund the infrastructure projects. He goes in and talks with a state representative, and yeah, they'll let him make the pitch for 5 minutes, but then the question always comes down to, how many people do you represent? How much money do you got? Because they want to know if they're going to piss off a big group by saying no, or if they're going to turn their back on campaign funding. And then if you talk to people who are active trying to persuade the legislature, they always get hit with those two questions. So what we need is a lot of people and some money. How are you going to do that? You got to make it an issue, make it a cause. Right now, everybody, people are getting, a third of the country gets its news through TikTok, which blows my mind. But
I've never even been on TikTok.
I've never been there yet.
either. Just enough to
I'm one of the
see.
2/3.
So we got to get out there and compete for attention, and money. How can we compete? We're just the little people. When they figure out how subversive this is, I would expect the AI labs to start turning down the features so that we can't use it like this. But right now, this is the window. We could do something. And if you're not into AI, pick this up and go for one of these other issues. Green New Deal or whatever, whatever's important. But this is the golden opportunity for grassroots movements.
Are these things like Polis and Perplexity apps you can get like on your phone or something?
Yeah.
You get them on the computer,
You get
or how
them
do
on
you
your-
find them?
Yeah, sometimes they need a server, but yeah. But the guy at, do you know Dirk at the,
What's the name?
Dirk at the Secular Hub?
No.
He spun Polis up. He had a survey going. He said it took a couple hours. But it's software created by the Taiwanese and it was by Taiwanese hackers because the government was going to open the economy to investment from the mainland. They were going to let communist China buy their companies. And it just infuriated the people. They said, no way, we don't want that. So the hackers got together and they did many things, but one thing they did was put Polis up there so that they could accurately collect and demonstrate to the politicians the opposition to what they were trying to do. And so they had 13, 14 million people all in on poll lists, talking about what should be done instead and whether they agreed with what the government's doing. And they could go to the government and say, look, 14 million people oppose. That's how many people I represent.
Mhm.
It's not just me and my friends here complaining. We've been talking to people. I can get them, and they did. It was called a sunflower protest. They occupied the ministries. They said, these guys are gonna pass this bill, get down here. And they had 10,000 people trying to get into a government building. Look it up, the sunflower protest. It's really inspiring chapter in history. Man, we can do it here, using their software. It's open source.
So, you throw up some example issues here on this particular slide. It's 150 issues. I wonder if any of them were religious freedom and what AI thinks about that. Like, I wonder what AI would think about the statement that in a democratic republic, is it fair to have "In God We Trust" on the currency? That was put on it.
You want to see it? You want to go to
Yeah,
the
sure.
website?
Let's do that. That'd be
Let's do
great
that.
for the video.
It's always fun.
Since
to
we're
do.
kind of like an anti-religious group.
Yeah. I'll try again and see this thing. Yeah, okay, good. So I'm going to type what I heard. There's a little bit of latency in the typing. Sometimes I shell out to a notepad just to get the typing done quickly. Okay, so is it fair
In a democratic republic, to have "In God We Trust," maybe you got to put that in quotes, on the currency, or engraved on the currency, printed on the currency?
Okay. Now, when I put this in here, it's going to start responding instantly. What I want you to remember is that is the response you get when you ask it to do programming as well. And it can generate, right now, 2 hours of human labor as fast as you're going to get this answer. And they expect it to go to a month's worth of programming.
So you're saying this thing is writing the code to go find the answer
This is how fast.
to
you
this
get
question?
Watch this. I mean, this is interesting too, but I also want you to realize they're getting AI to program AI. And that's why suddenly it's doubling every 4 months. They're not waiting on humans to program it anymore. It's programming itself.
Sounds like you might be a little late to regulate it.
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking of.
Oh, wait, now why is, you know why? Sorry. I didn't realize it wasn't on the screen. It's gone out to the web, it's searching for sources, those are all the sources it's found, it's read them all, it's now thinking through it, saying, okay, I've got the main points, I know these are the topics I need to mention, arguments in favor, given these points, I'll craft a balanced response. There you go, boom.
Can you enlarge that?
So it says, yeah, I know, it's hard, isn't it? The question of whether it's fair to have God and trust on the currency in a republic involves considering constitutional principles, historical context, and diverse perspectives. Here's the historical context. Here's the legal status. Here's the arguments supporting fairness. Here's the arguments against fairness. Here's the issues of democratic representation. And every one of these are footnotes. Eighth Circuit, free speech. Center has got a decision from the Eighth Circuit Appellate Court. Up here, what do we got here? I can do it. That's the same one, isn't it? Let's, 4. 4 is a different one. Okay, I don't know what the BJC is, but U.S. Supreme Court declines "In God We Trust" challenge. So that's the history. Okay, so there you go, man. That's like a 2 or 3 page response. Balanced.
Yeah.
No. Steel man, straw man. And
Can you send it to
generative-
his computer and he can keep working on it?
Well,
Oh, absolutely.
I'll go mess with this on my own. It's fascinating.
Yeah, that's amazing to do that, something that fast.
And down here, you can just do a follow-up question,
Yeah, start refining it, right?
right? And you're having a conversation. It's not a new conversation every time you put something in. You can just keep moving the ball forward in what you're interested in. It's like, you know what? I didn't realize that history was so complex. What about that decision? You know, what was the division on the court? What were the arguments for and against? I've done that with the gun control cases. You know, understanding more about what the justices were
Yeah, the
thinking.
nuance.
Yeah,
Let's
exactly.
learn the nuance. That's what's going to save us, I think, is nuance.
Right, and then here it says, oh, here's some related questions. So it'll suggest follow-on questions for you. And you just have to hit this plus and it'll go off and answer them. How did the phrase God just become a national motto? Well, that's interesting. Boom, let's do that. And you see,
Billy
go out and do
Graham.
research. It's reading it all, it's bringing it back in, thinking about how to structure the response, what's fair, what's complete. You know, I mean, it's amazing to watch. And
That fast.
the more you watch it, the better you feel about it.
Yeah, right. And the better you get at using it too.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, you can say, tell me what Christian nationalists would say about this. I mean, it's built to please. So if you say, I want a Christian nationalist perspective, it's gonna go out there and get materials and build that for you too. You can twist its arm in any direction you want. But what I've found is if you don't twist its arm, it's always doing this balance thing, because it's just trying to average out. Because it doesn't know who you are. And it treats, I guess its default mode is you're an objective person without an axe to grind. You just want to know.
Right. So that's why it can be a negative too, is because negative forces can use it to get an argument that sounds good to a layperson, right? An uninformed
My
person.
vision for Polis is that when it clusters those people, they get into a dialogue. And before they put another comment on there, they go talk with AI and say, well, you know, do I have a leg to stand on here? Is this historically accurate? You know, am I making this up? You know, is that position really that popular? What does national polling say? I mean, people do their own research, then they post the comeback comment. So I think it will elevate the quality of conversation as well. I've been trying to get a demonstration project together, and I've called conservative people. Like, there's this guy I know who runs a talk show down in Denver on AM radio. He's on the radio 4 hours a day,
Oh my God.
spouting Austrian economics and stuff. I've had him in at Jefferson Humanist as a speaker.
Mm.
I had him debate student loan forgiveness with one of the regents of University of Colorado. He won because the regent didn't take the assignment seriously and just got up there and spouted, quoted Jefferson. Whereas the conservative guy is saying, if you do this, this is the economic impact. I've looked at the Carnegie Institute, they do support this in principle, but they say it's going to be really complicated to implement in detail, and when you consider all these practical ramifications, especially people resenting the fact that they paid off loans and now we're giving the money to these people that didn't pay off their loans. And he just slaughtered the regent. So I said, Jimmy, I've got a really good tool here where we could have online debates with computers supporting each team. And we could really get past the rhetoric and really get down to the brass tacks of every issue.
Yeah, right.
And I didn't get a response. He didn't want to go there.
Yeah, they don't want the truth. Some people don't want the truth.
Yeah. Or,
I mean, it's,
or to be generous, maybe he's just a little worried that I know AI better than he does.
yeah, okay.
So maybe he thought I'd be at a disadvantage. But anyway, I've tried several of those, and I can't get conservatives to engage. Plenty of liberals want to do this. Can't get the conservatives,
Interesting.
which is unfortunate. So I want to keep working at that, because I think that'd be a great demonstration project.
Yeah.
If you don't trust this thing to be objective, at least you can trust it when two teams use it to talk to each other. That's as close as we can get to
Yeah.
objectivity.
So you do some kind of monthly talk at the Secular Hub, or,
It's called a forum. It's the most partisan forum.
and you talk about things like this or
Yeah,
government.
yeah. I try to keep, at the 20 minutes or so.
And they're not filmed or anything. They're not put up for anybody.
Not now.
You got to be there live to partake.
Right, right. But it's good, it's a good group. We usually have about 30 people a month.
Wow.
We usually break into 4 or 5 groups, talk about it in small formats.
Okay. Well, thank you again, Ralph, for doing this.
Yeah,
Anyone else have
appreciate
any
it.
questions?
Yeah, let's go ahead and give this a trial run.